Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Adriana hated holidays and weekends. All normal people couldn't wait for Friday because it was followed by the most pleasant days of the week. And for Adriana, the upcoming weekend always carried a negative connotation. And what could be joyful and exhausting housework with family scandals? This morning, she and her husband had already kissed. Adriana hardly thought about her husband. As he was born on the couch was opening one eye. Spouse grumbled, "You, what are you here beating like a mouse? You're doing everything on purpose to poison my day off." The man pushed away the pillow he had been hugging before and took a deep exhale. Adriana rolled the partitions, saying, "There was someone to do it." She wrinkled her nose and stepped farther away. "Michael, have you ever had your whole family smirk at a man? No remedy will take you, and you don't give me no teeth. I'm having a hard time, and you're going back and forth. I can't just tiptoe around. I've got a lot of things to do. If I wait for you to rush around, I won't have time to do anything." This dialogue made Michael very tense. He couldn't stand it when his wife outweighed him. And today her intransigence especially grated on the man's nerves. With a heavy sigh, the head of the family took the position of a thinker, and since his head did not want to hold independently, had to support it with his hands. Only after gaining a stable position, he honored his wife with a long, unkind look. "You can't keep up because your hands are in the wrong place. You walk like a somnambulist, stumbling at every step. You're a walking disaster, not a woman." Adriana was feeling through the rag that was wiping the dust with water. She did it with such force that the splash reached the sofa. Michael abruptly jumped out of the image of a thinker. His whole body now expressed indignation, and his right hand, like that of the leader of the world proletariat, extended from strictly forward. Only the legendary cap was missing for the completeness of the picture. The man's hangover speech also suffered from eloquence. From all the poor vocabulary arsenal, he came to mind these crooked hands, not seeing that I am bad. Adriana was satisfied with the effect of her graceful revenge. She mockingly advised to drink less. "Then it will be good. And about Krivoruchko, you're wrong. In this regard, you have no equal. 3 months she asked me to change the socket in the hallway." Michael shook his head. "I did everything. What are the complaints? You come and find out. Used to be sparks flying. Now it's electrocuted. About such masters as you, Michael, they say hand. But please don't insult me in my own home." The man's voice falsettoed, and his eyes sought to go beyond the orbits of his eyes. The torment of her lawful husband gave Adriana satisfaction after the man had been driven to an extreme degree of helplessness. The woman clutched noisily at the rag and began rubbing the furniture with fanatical exasperation. Michael watched the actions of his spouse for a few seconds, then resolutely cocked his head. But from this ill-considered action, red and purple circles swam before his eyes. The side effect of a cheerful Friday was due to the fact that the day before the man drastically overdid it and was now unable to hold an upright position. For more than a minute, his large body spontaneously collapsed on the sofa. And there were tears in his voice. "Adriana, why are you being so cruel to me? It's bad enough without your lectures, and you're adding to the pain. You are a woman, so you should be merciful." Adriana grinned wryly. "Mercy doesn't apply to people like you, Michael. I'd rather pity a benign cat on the street because he does not drink vodka and all that burns men." Belittling looked at his wife, Adriana. "All right. Let the good cat is more expensive for you than your own husband." Well, there was no water to take a sip of. This call shattered the wall of incomprehension. The woman looked at the sufferer in the male form and said with contempt, "Legs are. Go to the kitchen and serve yourself." Michael grabbed the left side of his chest and faked a heart attack. But the woman only grinned. "Michael, it's time for you to change your cardiac repertoire. Not jamming vodka in the garage with Akis of various stripes. They're on a non-alcoholic regimen." Adriana gathered up her cleaning supplies and proudly walked past her husband. She was already behind the door, but apparently something clicked in her soul, and she called out to her daughter Betty, "Stop dying. Father's suffering. Get him some water. God forbid he should throw up his hooves. We don't have money for a funeral." From somewhere in the back of the apartment came a grumbling sound. "You can't do this without me. I'm entitled to a decent night's sleep once a week." The daughter walked barefoot, fell into the kitchen, and cast a glance in her mother's direction, but the latter did not respond to her indignation. Betty filled a glass with water and headed for the sofa where her father was suffering on drinking Michael in one gulp, and left the vessel. "Thank you, daughter. You are a true friend and comrade to me. And our mom, she's as cold as a queen from a fairy tale." Adriana couldn't stand it. She appeared on the threshold of the living room, but now with a rolling pin. Really, this instrument in her hands. Angry woman, more like a bat. "I see you've been sneaking around behind my back. Well, what I want to tell you is this. There are no lackeys here, and I don't have to do what you want. You two have been out till this morning, and then you're giving me a hard time about it." Betty realized her mother was in a bad mood today, so she rushed over and kissed her. "Mommy, no offense. It's just a figure of speech. You're the most beautiful, the warmest." "True," Papa Michael mooed enthusiastically and threw out his hand in greeting. Mouth front. Not even the toughest woman could resist such a display of affection. She considered herself weak. She looked pleadingly at her husband and daughter. "Get yourselves cleaned up, and we'll hurry, so you'll both oversleep tomorrow. And it's a long way to lunch." Betty gave another kiss to her daughterly love. "Mommy, we'll call this meal Saturday lunch." Women affectionately slapped their daughter's soft spot. "Go get dressed and hide. You've got a nightmare on your head. Mom, you don't know anything about modern fashion. It's the latest trend. Half the town's wearing it." Betty kissed her father and ran to her room. Michael struggled to get up from the couch and went to the bathroom. "I gotta take a shower. You're too stormy today." Soon there was a steady sound of water, and Adriana calmed down a little. She tried to switch to the current problems, but suddenly her husband's cheerful voice came from the bathroom. "Adriana forgot to tell you that Kathy is here. I met her yesterday, and she asked if you could come by. As soon as she's free. She's not much of a lady. She could have come herself. The crown won't fall off her head. Do as you please. My business is small." I was asked. I passed on the information. In just 10 minutes, Michael had undergone a dramatic transformation. A healthy blush burned on his cheeks. There was no more hangover cloudiness in his eyes. Adriana looked at her husband and said with satisfaction, "Well, now it's different. Now you look like a human being." The man threw a wet towel into the bathroom and tried to hug his wife, but she grimaced. "Michael, are you so stinky you can snack?" Apparently, he had expected a different reaction and said with irritation, "You don't break your nose," like a girl before her first wedding night. Michael, thinking what he was saying, would be embarrassed of his daughter. Betty informed in a cheerful voice, "Mom, don't worry. I'm aware of the relationship between members of the opposite sexes. You've probably forgotten that your daughter is in medical school, haven't you?" As the mother and father argued, they didn't notice their heiress entering the kitchen. Betty rushed over to the table and started grabbing everything off the plates. "Man, I'm so hungry. I have a voracious appetite." Adriana looked fondly at her daughter. "Sit down at the table and eat. What's with all the hand grabbing?" Betty managed to chew and at the same time say, "Mommy, it tastes better that way." If you don't know, I can inform you that the tradition of eating without using cutlery is developed in many countries. So don't swear at your daughter. Don't waste your precious nerves. No nerves will be enough with you. Dad's been drinking a lot. And you were out at night. The smile fell off the girl's face. "Mommy, did you choose the wrong verb? I didn't go out with girls. Remember I warned you that Betty has a wedding next week, so we got together for, like, a bachelorette party yesterday." The woman waved her hand nonchalantly. "You have a bachelorette party the night before a wedding, not the week before. Betty looked at her mother condescendingly. "We're having a rehearsal." Adriana repeated the dismissive gestures and said in the same tone, "What a life. Everyone's rehearsing hairstyles, bachelorette, and bachelor parties. What's the use? It doesn't. Family life doesn't depend on those little things. It can't be rehearsed." The daughter said nothing to her mother. She looked at her father expressively, as if expecting him to support her. Michael had coped with his lunch and was now drinking tea, although the wedding topic was far from his interest. He couldn't refuse his daughter's support, making a smart expression on his face. The man remarked to his mother, "You're not on a roll today. You're picking on me. Now you're talking about the wedding. I don't care how people get married. The wedding should be fun. Who would doubt it? You're all about fun. I don't care about other people either, unless it's about my family. Michael, instead of affecting your daughter, you're all over everything." "Adriana, Betty is already a full-fledged citizen. You forgot that she is already 19 and she can go out till morning and even get married without your permission, has every right to." The woman's outrage took her breath away. "Michael, do you even think about what you're talking about? What marriage? Look at her. She's just a kid. Honey, think of yourself at that age. By the way, if memory serves, you were 19 when we got married." The man made dancing paw with his feet and smirked ambiguously, expecting a similar reaction from his wife. But Adriana threw him a glare. "It was my biggest mistake in life. If I hadn't flown headlong into marriage, I would have studied at the Institute, gotten a good profession, and my life would have turned out very differently." This confession made an unpleasant impression on Michael. His lips drew together into a single thread. His cheekbones set. "And if I understand you correctly, you've been regretting being my wife for 20 years. Suddenly, he was pouring out a barrage of sludge on me. But it's better to find out the truth late than to remain in ignorance for years on end. Adriana tried to say something in her defense, but the man beat her to it. "Adriana, can you still fix this? Find a decent life partner. If I don't suit you," Michael pushed his plate away from him and got up from the table. A moment later, the apartment door slammed, and Betty rushed into the hallway. "Daddy, wait." But the head of the family had already left the house, which always seemed warm and cozy to him. Only faintly, and the smell of male perfume hovered in the cramped room. The daughter looked reproachfully at her mother. "I don't understand why you arranged all this, and then you have to think before you say something. Don't you realize that you've hurt Daddy?" Adriana asked quietly. "How did I hurt him?" The daughter was on the verge of a breakdown. "With your confession, sometimes it's better to be quiet than to speak. And then, if you hadn't married Daddy, then I wouldn't have been born. So I'm your biggest mistake too." Ducking her head with two neat ponytails, Betty headed for the exit, but halfway there she turned around. "Aunt Kathy is here. She asked you to stop by and see them. She has some kind of emergency message for you." The door slammed again, and Adriana was left alone with her unhappy thoughts. She was already regretting having said so many nasty things to the people closest to her, but the germ of doubt that had been brewing in her heart for a long time now, especially strongly lately, began to bother her. Therefore, when her daughter reported about the upcoming wedding of her girlfriend, this unpleasant feeling immediately reminded herself. The Metelkin brothers were born and grew up in a village lost among the forests. But like most young people of the post-war era, they were eager to take part in something important to the country and big. The eldest Ethan, after serving in the army, set out to conquer the north. He dreamed of sailing the Barents Sea, but after two first trips he realized that he would not make a navigator. The first failure did not deprive the enthusiast of faith in his strength, and Ethan got a job at a mining enrichment plant. In this field he found himself and wrote optimistic letters to his relatives. In one of them he reported, "In a month or two, I will get a separate apartment and marry a wonderful girl. She also works at the mill. She taught chips. I hope that she will join our friendly family." A little later, Ethan wrote that he and his young wife celebrated a noisy housewarming, and they were given a 2-chamber refrigerator from work. At that time, such an appliance was the dream of all Soviet housewives, so the brother's mother was proud of her eldest son's achievements and read his letters aloud in the store. The village women oohed and awed. "I envy you. No such luck. What a good son. And he sends them money every month." Envy bit the younger brother's soul too. Benjamin, too, dreamed of becoming rich and successful. However, his plans did not include moving too far away from his native land, and he found an interesting occupation in the regional center. After studying at a vocational technical school, Benjamin got a job in a construction organization. He started as a simple laborer. Then he entered the institute by correspondence and became a site foreman. In his personal life, too, everything developed in an escalating way. Benjamin married a modest girl, Christina, and a year later, Adriana appeared in the family. The first childhood memories of his youth are connected with his father. Benjamin took his young daughter to the construction site and showed her from a bird's eye view of the mountains. "Watch, daughter, and memorize how cities grow." Adriana was breathless at the panorama below. But she wasn't scared at all because her daddy was there. She was very proud of her father. And first in kindergarten, and then at school, she told her peers, "My daddy has the most important profession in the world. When I grow up too, how will he build cities?" Parents condescended to the plans of the little daughter, but so far did not interfere with them. Only when the girl became older, her father began to make attempts to redirect her to the wall around so many other very interesting activities. "You're a girl. You'd better choose a quieter profession. Could you be like mom and become a nurse? It's a very respectable profession. You'll always be clean, warm, and in a white coat." Hearing her husband talk like that, Christina was indignant. "Benjamin, why advise your child on something you have no idea about? Medicine is only an angelic field at first glance. In reality, there's suffering and death every day. So don't get ahead of yourself. The time will come, and Adriana will choose what she wants to do. Your brother and his wife have settled down very well in life, riding like cheese and butter. They've got a big apartment and a car. They can afford things that others dare not dream of." Adriana listened to her parents' arguments and memorized. She knew about the existence of relatives, but she had seen them only once. The girl was in 3rd grade when Uncle Ethan and his wife and young daughter came to visit them for 2 days. Dad's brother was very funny and joked a lot. Life is like a weather forecast. Everything comes true exactly, but at a different time. In general, Uncle Ethan had a saying for every occasion. I remembered only one saying from the whole arsenal. If we imagine that an ordinary gymnasium is a school of wizards, then all students can be divided into 3 categories: wizards, magicians, and sorcerers. The girl laughed at this caustic definition because in their class there were only solid oaks, sorcerers. She decided to share her findings with Kathy, Uncle Ethan's daughter. Even though the cousin was a full 2 years younger than Adriana, she knew more than she ever dreamed. Kathy couldn't sit in one place for a minute, and she couldn't stop pestering Adriana. "What are we gonna do with you and me stuck at home? Let's go out. You probably have friends." Adriana was eager to eat in the yard and at school, but your mom looks at us like that. Don't mind her. She always looks like that because she doesn't trust anyone. Indeed, Aunt Clara was the complete opposite of her husband. She was silent all the time and sighed unhappily when, after much persuasion, Adriana decided to take her cousin out in public. The aunt had rudely lashed out, not at her daughter, but at Adriana. "If you have an itch in one place, go for a walk, and Kathy has nothing to do in the yard." Adriana cried with resentment. Benjamin stood up for his daughter. "What's the matter? What did you run into?" "On the wall. You know, in our family it's not customary to yell at children, let alone humiliate them." Aunt Clara gave a squeamish wrinkle. "I've already noticed that it's chaos here. Everyone does whatever is on their mind. In our family, the rules are a little different." Auntie had already prepared to share her experience of proper family life. but her husband condemned her fervor, trying to restrain himself. Ethan reprimanded his wife Clara. "You must have forgotten that we are guests. That means you shouldn't go into someone else's monastery with your own rules." Mother Kathy blushed with indignation and began to prove her husband right with the persistence of blind men. "What did I say that was so special? Nothing. I'm just trying to protect our daughter." Uncle Ethan threw both hands up as if he was going to throw a ball into the net. "Clara, how many times do I have to tell you that a kid is supposed to socialize with other kids? He's supposed to be naughty and sassy. Are you always trying to put Kathy in a flask?" Benjamin decided to support his older brother. "Indeed, Kathy, you have nothing to be afraid of. There are decent people living in our house, and the girls are not threatened in the yard." The aunt, with the same squeamish expression on her face, objected to the owner of the house. "I saw these decent people yesterday. Some of them are playing dominoes, and others are in the bushes thinking for two. I can imagine what kind of kids grow up with parents like that. Such a campaign is definitely not suitable for our daughter." At the end of this tirade, Clara grabbed Kathy by the hand and dragged her daughter to the room, which the owners had allocated to the relatives. Already from there, the woman shouted in her own voice to Ethan, "We're going home tomorrow." Ethan felt uncomfortable with his wife's behavior. He grinned wryly and told his brother, "Yes, Benjamin, real life is different from a fairy tale in that everything happens in it. On the contrary, you marry a beautiful princess who after a year or even earlier turns into a warthog and already a toad or a viper." The next morning, the guests left for home in an urgent manner. Adriana did not even have time to say goodbye to her cousin. From then on, she disliked her aunt with all her soul and confessed to her parents, "Kathy is nice, and Uncle Ethan is nice too. Aunt Clara is a very bad person. If she comes here again, I won't let her in the apartment." Benjamin tried to change the mind of a 10-year-old girl. "Adriana, you can't judge a person by one act. Aunt Clara was just in a bad mood and said some stupid things. Indeed, she is kinder. Aunts don't say such mean words." The wall was destined to keep its promise because Uncle Ethan and his family did not come for a long time. The girl began already to forget about the offense against her aunt. One day at dinner, her father said sadly, Ethan called to say that he had been diagnosed with a serious illness and he no longer works at the mill. Christina expertly said, "Unfortunately, many people pay for a comfortable life with their health. After all, no one pays big money for nothing." Adriana realized that this conversation was not for children's ears. She kept silent and memorized everything her parents said. A few days later, the girl learned from her father that Uncle Ethan and his family were preparing to move. Doctors said that in the north for his brother is unsuitable climate. In short, they are preparing to move. The daughter was burning with curiosity. She involuntarily burst out a question, "Daddy, and they will live with us again?" "No, Uncle Ethan and Aunt Clara are buying an apartment in our city. They have already found a suitable option." This news made Adriana happy. "That's great. So Kathy will be living here now too, and we'll be seeing her." "Of course you will. Your sisters. Siblings should keep in touch." But Clara wasn't in the mood for sibling bonding. Immediately after moving into the new apartment, she remarked with a wry smile that we were very lucky to have the apartment. Ethan wanted to live close to his brother. "I think it's best for relatives to keep their distance in every sense." Christina took the hint and said, "Don't worry. Benjamin and I are not in the habit of imposing our society on others. But our house is always open to guests, so you can come to us at any time of the day, even at night." Clara only shook her lips and flashed her eyes angrily. Because Adriana's mom had taken her by surprise with her offer, despite her wife's prejudice against her brother's family. Ethan met regularly with Benjamin. They visited the old people in the village together and involved their daughters in such activities. Clara tried to prevent such meetings in every possible way. Sometimes she even went to provocations, but it is known that any obstacle only hardens the character and friendship between the sisters, despite the tricks of Kathy and Mother. only grew stronger. The only thing that united the two families was worry about their older brother. The change of climate did not improve Ethan's health. He slowly faded away before the eyes of his relatives. Christina tried to arrange for her husband's brother through familiar doctors, consultations with specialists in famous clinics, but even the most renowned luminaries of medicine have divorced their hands. Unfortunately, the process is very neglected, and it is almost impossible to fix anything. Ethan died when he was only 47 years old. Kathy experienced her father's death as the greatest tragedy of her life. For Adriana, it was also the first serious loss, because she loved her kind and cheerful uncle, who had his own quips for every occasion. It was the short and very apt sayings that she remembered the most. Trying to soothe the crying Kathy, she repeated time after time life as a holiday. And on holidays, you should not work. Such days are supposed to be fun. The cousin was surprised. Adriana, what do you want to say to yourself? I just remembered your dad's favorite expression about life and holidays. I think he would have told you now, Kathy, to stop crying. Kathy looked at Adriana in disbelief. Do you think he would say that? I'm sure he would. You might even think he's giving you that order through me. You know, my mom says that everyone who dies goes up into the sky and watches their loved ones from there. Kathy froze with her mouth open. She must have been in a state of prostration for a minute. Then she jumped outside. She looked up at the starry sky for a long time. Adriana realized that her younger sister believed in this mystical story about the souls of the dead. The older sister's hunch was confirmed. A few days later, Kathy showed up at their door on a Sunday afternoon early in the morning. The girl was excited, her eyes burning when she and Adriana were alone. She mumbled mysteriously, "You were right. They all live in the sky." Adriana darted her eyes out in bewilderment. "Who are they?" Kathy sighed eloquently. "Who's who?" "The ones who died. You were the one who told me. Have you forgotten?" Adriana remembered a recent conversation about this. How you found out it was Adriana became a little creepy because her sister's eyes were fierce. Kathy moved closer to her sister and whispered, "I had a dream about Dad today, but it wasn't like a dream. It was real. Daddy told me that where he is now is very nice." Adriana asked, "I hope you didn't tell your mom about your vision." "What?" "She'd take me to a psychologist. If I tell her that, it's our little secret." "We did." Kathy looked at Adriana like she discovered the secret to eternal life, or something like that. Childish maximalism it is. Adriana couldn't deny her sister such a small thing. The common grief brought the girls and Kathy even closer together, and she paid less attention to her mother's eternal nagging. By the time she graduated from high school, she and her parents had practically nothing in common. Kathy lived her own active life and made very bold plans for the future. She shared them only with her cousin. The birth mother was in complete ignorance. After the death of her husband, she completely withdrew into herself and even business. Her only daughter was of little interest to her, not to mention the events that were unfolding across the country at that time. The apartment was unaccustomedly quiet, and only the clock flowed miserably on the wall. Adriana ate, dwelling on the unpleasant feeling of discomfort. Now she was very sorry that she had said to her husband, and at the same time to her daughter, all sorts of nonsense. Emotions burst out, and the woman half-voiced said, "Amazing things are happening in this world unnoticeably. I turned into an exact copy of Aunt Clara, became just as squabbling and angry. Can people change so drastically? What's wrong with me? I wasn't like this, wasn't I? Or just didn't notice?" The woman didn't even try to find an answer to this question, because she knew it well, only she was afraid to say it out loud. She reluctantly set about cleaning up, but youthful memories came flooding back with renewed vigor. She could no longer resist the urge to see her sister, and Adriana began to hurriedly pack. She just needed some air and distraction, and the bad thoughts would finally leave her head. "I'm going to go tell the family. Even though Natalka's made a lot of blood for me. Still, we had a beautiful moment together. 20 years have flashed by imperceptibly, And during this time, a lot has happened in a series of different events. There were moments that Adriana, today, doesn't want to remember. But time, if it is not even cured, old wounds make you look at the affairs of bygone days in a new way. These were roughly the thoughts hovering in the 40-year-old woman's mind as she rode the bus to the neighborhood where her aunt lived. She bore her widowhood and her fate with fortitude. And even with a sense of pride, she grieved briefly after the funeral of her beloved husband. She found solace in occult practices. In the late 90s, many people were obsessed with fortune-telling on tarot cards, astrological predictions on the stars, and other hoaxes. Kathy's mother was not just interested in such directions, she studied them thoroughly. And the aunt did not even try to hide from her daughter, where she disappears in the evenings. Kathy was horrified when she found out and immediately ran to her relatives. Uncle Benjamin, Aunt Christina, help me. I'm very afraid for Mommy. She goes to some very questionable events, and strange people I'd never seen before have been coming to our house. Benjamin promised his niece, "You're not prematurely pining away. The devil is not as bad as he's made out to be, but I'll be sure to drop by the other day." The man wanted to arrange a meeting with his sister-in-law by phone, but she did not pick up the phone. So he went to the widow's house. The woman did not open the door for a long time, and when the guest was about to leave from behind the massive door, there were signs of life in the form of a ball of footsteps and mumbling. Then the door opened slightly, but a chain prevented the guest from crossing the threshold. The hostess did not waste time in greeting him, but asked him sternly why he had come. "It's me, Benjamin. You didn't recognize me." "I was recognized." "So, what of it?" "We have nothing to talk about." "I need to talk to you." "No." "And there's nothing to connect us anymore." The woman was about to close the door, but Benjamin managed to get a foot in the door. "Wait, I wanted to talk to you about Kathy. She's my niece, and I care about her." The woman sang snackily. The guest was even scared, thinking that this viper in human form would now release its poisonous sting. But instead of this instrument, Clara used words about "my Kathy has someone to take care of. So we don't need your help, kinfolk, and we'd better, Benjamin. Go goodbye and don't come back. I don't want to see you or your wife, or your restless Adriana. She's always leading my daughter astray. And one day I will be forced to take action against her bad influence." Again, there was a menacing hiss in the daughter-in-law's voice, and Benjamin withdrew his foot. The door slammed in his face, and he stood on the landing for some time, thinking over the last words of his relative. At home, the head of the family told his wife in detail about his visit. In conclusion, added Christina, "You will not believe it, but for the first time in my life, I experienced panic terror. There was something so demonic about Clark. And honestly, I don't want to see her anymore." Christina laughed. "Benjamin, you're a man. Don't fill your head with judgment. Only highly respected people can believe in witchcraft and fortune-telling. But you're an educated man." Benjamin thought for a long time before answering. "Christina, but you won't deny that conspiracies and curses work." The men at work told stories that gave me goosebumps. Adriana decided to put her own spin on it. "Mom, Dad is right, because magic rituals work. It all depends on who's doing them." Kathy told me something that takes my breath away too. Christina hugged her husband and daughter. "My darlings, you are bringing your own fears upon yourselves. We have rumors like that in the hospital too, and sometimes we hear even worse stories. I can assure you that there is no scientific proof of magic, white or black." Adriana exclaimed anyway, "But something does come true. It's pure coincidence. Human life is full of different events, so coincidences are not rare. But for some reason, we try to explain such facts with mysticism." Adriana very much wanted to believe her mother, but all the subsequent events convinced her that there are no coincidences. Only a few days had passed since Benjamin's fateful visit to his brother's widow, and Kathy had shown up late that night with a suitcase. It was not difficult to guess from the redness of the girl's eyes that she had been crying. Christina rushed to her niece at what had happened. "Don't you look like yourself?" Kathy appeared in the hallway. I can't take it anymore. Mom's completely lost her mind. She let a whole bunch of strangers into the apartment. She says they're the best magicians in the country. They're here for a contest, and my mom decided to give them our apartment for temporary residence. Benjamin excitedly said maybe I shouldn't have left my mom with suspicious people. The niece objected hotly. Uncle Benjamin, what can I, a schoolgirl, do? I told her that I would stay with you until these people leave our house. They're generally so harmless, except for one. Her name is Military. She's all black, and her eyes are black too. How'd she stare at me? I nearly fainted when she said in a huge voice that my future was in gold that glistened like a husk of seed. My knees buckled in an instant. My mom went after that woman for asking questions, and I packed my bags for you. You should have. You don't want to be jinxed by that. Adriana took her sister's suitcase and led her guest into a small room where she had long ago set up a girlish realm for herself. Since it was a popular topic, the girls continued to discuss it. Adriana's parents were also excited by the unexpected appearance of their niece. Benjamin had time even before dinner to find out the meaning of an obscure word, so he began the evening meal with a moment of enlightenment. I've been looking through the encyclopedia and found out that in Spanish it means those who see the future. So your mom's guests are fortune tellers. Kathy felt safe and secure with her relatives. She answered cheerfully, yeah, I don't really care how the name translates. It's just that I'm worried about my mom because she's been doing a lot of 20 in parallel worlds. And I don't like it at all. There are only a couple months left, and school will be behind me. And then I can leave this town, and everything will be just a bad memory. Christina complimented her niece. That's right, Kathy. You're a smart girl, and I'm sure you'll get into college. Take an example from your sister. Adriana went to college. She's going to be an architect. This profession will never lose its importance. Kathy scrutinized. No, I'm not going to design cities, and I don't want to stay here either. I'll go to the capital. There are more opportunities there. Kathy stayed with them for almost a week. Afterwards, she confessed it was the most wonderful time of her life. This time, however, the relative was the personification of peace. Christina, though surprised by the visit, was also hospitable. Clara, come in. We were just about to have tea. The girls have baked cupcakes. We'll taste them together. The guests smiled sweetly at the invitation, but refused to have tea. We'll have tea some other time. There's no time now. I actually came for Kathy. Clara paced the hallway, waiting for his daughter to gather her things. At last, Kathy appeared with her suitcase and, in a monotonous voice, said to the guest, "You don't hold a grudge against me. I didn't mean to offend you. Thank you for taking Kathy in." Benjamin was very glad that his daughter-in-law was showing some humanity. "Oh, you're welcome. We're not strangers." Aunt Clara looked at him with a strange look, then said in the same colorless voice, "We should be careful at bus stops, especially in the evening. And then they run around the city without great-grandchildren. Drunk." An icy chill ran down Adriana's back. "Aunt Clara, what are you talking about?" Auntie shifted her gaze to her. "It's not a big deal. I just wanted to warn you. Get ready for the wedding. You'll be married soon." Adriana laughed in her aunt's face. "Aunt Clara, you're talking nonsense. Just like a fortune teller, I have to disappoint you. I'm not getting married in the next 5 years. Only after I get my diploma will I plan to start a family of my own." Her aunt looked at her again with a penetrating gaze. "There's no escaping the fates. As it is written in your destiny, it will come true." Kathy signaled to her sister that her mother was a little out of sorts to spare her relatives from an unpleasant visitor. She took her parent under her elbow and led her towards the exit. "Mom, everyone, let's go home. Picked up from your friends, all kinds of nonsense, and now you are talking nonsense." When the sister-in-law and her niece were out the door, Benjamin twirled his index finger at his temple. "What happened to the woman?" "That's the kind of nonsense Christina is talking. That's your department. Tell me, is she sure she's out of marbles for rollers?" Or is she just playing fortune teller? Christina grinned. More like the second. This is a special time. It's the millennium and old superstitions have come to life and new ones have appeared. The public's interest has to be piqued somehow. Here's a hoaxer from different levels trying. The topic of conversation smoothly flowed to different ways of fraud. Fortune tellers and fortune tellers. Every member of the family had a story to tell. Therefore, dinner and the rest of the evening turned out to have a mystical tinge. In the morning, all three of them forgot about Aunt Clara's visit and her delirious speeches. It wasn't until months later that Adriana remembered everything Kathy had talked about in the hallway. Adriana barely had time to touch the bell button before the door swung open, and all the passion was back in her arms. Adriana, how have I missed you? You have no idea how long it's been since we've seen each other. Probably 5 or 6. A disgruntled voice came from the darkness of the hallway. Kathy, let the man into the apartment. What's the fashion? On the doorstep, Kathy hugged, waved her hand. Mom, you should definitely get your words in. This is my sister, and I have every right to greet her with violent emotions. Kathy let the guest pass and pointed towards her room. Come on, we'll have tea later. Adriana, I agree. I nodded only from the table. So I don't want to eat. I've got my own things to do, and I'm here for you. Yes, I met Michael yesterday, and I asked him to tell you to stop by right away. You have no idea what I dug up the other day. Probably some kind of mind-blowing wedding scenario. No, you didn't. Kathy shut the door tight and gave her sister a meaningful wink. Mom's gotten very inquisitive in her old age, and several times I've caught her in the act. Adriana murmured, let her eavesdrop rather than engage in dubious business. Kathy, and stared pensively at one point. Yeah, I had a hard time re-educating her. Honestly, I can't believe Mom was ever obsessed with any of this stuff. Although, you know, deep down, sis, sometimes I believe in predictions myself. You're not alone. I do too, especially lately. Both women were silent, each thinking about something else. Kathy went to university after high school, but graduated from the institute with great difficulty. She had taken 2 academic leaves of absence because she was woefully short of time for the main business of her life. Weddings. Adriana Benjamin's father gave his niece an inexpensive camera for her 17th birthday. It happened just before Adriana's wedding, and Kathy decided to capture the event. For 2 days, she ran around with the camera, shooting everything. But the newlyweds never got a CD. For a long time, Kathy fed them breakfast, and then she left for the capital and did not appear in her hometown for 3 years. Years went by and life was pulling the couple more and more every day. Them in its vortex, and Michael and Kathy less and less often remembered the day of their marriage. And for the first time in 20 years, with Kathy's encouragement, Adriana remembered that she had once glittered in a snow-white bridesmaid's gown. She sighed sadly and sat back in her chair. Come on, Kathy, dazzle my imagination. I'm getting ready. The woman shuddered. Ugh, you scared me. I hesitated for a moment. Now just 1 minute. Kathy rushed to the fashion, on which were laid out in strict order all the paraphernalia necessary for a wedding planner. The guests nodded with a chuckle at the props. Do you have a job to do here? You're right, as always. Some moms I know asked me. Their granddaughter's getting married on Saturday. Actually, they've been common law for 2 years, and suddenly they're getting married. It's usually rushed when there's a new addition to the family. I'm never interested in such details. My business is to please clients and receive for their services money. Those are the 2 pillars of my business. Adriana said with a sneer, I don't doubt that you're doing a great job. Kathy, my chin jerked up. I'm trying. Do you know how competitive this market is? I have no idea. I'm not really in the entertainment business. I'm more concerned with my home and my unenviable job. My sister sighed. That's when I was drinking. I shouldn't have dropped out of school. Well, let's not talk about sad things. Do you want to know what my competitors call me? Adriana looked at her sister and mentally noted that the years had only slightly affected Kathy, and she was still as vivacious as in her youth. There wasn't a single wrinkle on her face, and her blonde hair was neatly localized on her shoulders. As her sister didn't answer her question, Kathy began to shake her. "Adriana, why are you silent?" "I don't recognize you." The guests laughed. "I was speechless at the sight of your beauty. Are you all so exquisitely groomed?" Kathy let out a heavy sigh. "What beauty is there? Pitiful glimmers of the youth that escaped me. It's nice to eat." "So, where were we?" "The competition. They gave you the nickname Kathy," in a well-pitched voice, said, "Please love and welcome. This is a rare exclusive." Wedding General Adriana clapped her hands. "You know what, sis? There's something in that, isn't there? I can't judge your professional qualities because I've never been to your events, but you have the exterior to match the rank of general. And I'm talking about 20 years in the business. I love making people happy. Too bad most of the time that happiness is fleeting. That's for sure." Suspicious sounds were heard behind the door, and Kathy fell silent. The guests looked at their cousin with fear. "You have mice." Kathy laughed. "One mouse of enormous size." The hostess walked to the door and said loudly, "Mom, stop scaring people. Come on in." The door opened slowly and creaked open just enough for Clara to slip in. "Kathy, the kettle is already boiling. Are you going to have tea now or a little later?" "Mom, in about 5 minutes. We'll have a little more in confidence." All right, you girls talk, and I'll wait for you in the kitchen." The door closed, and Kathy confessed to her sister, "Sometimes I feel like Mom's trying to make up for her past mistakes. I feel sorry for her, but I don't know how to help her." "Kathy, it's very simple. You have to love your family. Parents value the love, care, and respect of their children above all else." Adriana's voice treacherously trembled, and Kathy hugged her sister Adriana's ears again. "Don't beat yourself up. It wasn't your fault. It was an accident. That's the way it is. But your mother warned us of misfortune. We didn't believe her. We thought her words were nonsense." Adriana felt tears come to her eyes. She remembered again the terrible day her parents had died. It had happened shortly after she and Michael had gotten married. The newlyweds learned that their family was expecting a new addition and hurried to please the future grandparents. Benjamin, by long-established tradition, decided to celebrate this event and invited his wife to dinner at the restaurant Christina. Who knows, maybe this is the last time fate gives us such an opportunity. The grandchildren will come, and you and I will get stuck in troubles. Hey, young people, are you with us or not? Adriana had been tormented by cabs since the first weeks of her pregnancy, and the mere thought of going to a catering establishment made her nauseous. "No, I'd rather not. I'll ruin your evening." Christina supported her daughter. "You're right, Adriana. In your situation, it's better not to take any chances." Benjamin, for the occasion, paid for his new suit, and the mother wore a sequined evening dress. They ordered a cab, and in farewell, the mother, already from the car, shouted, "Tomorrow morning, call me." Adriana did not even suspect at that time that it was the last time she saw her parents alive. As eyewitnesses later told us, the Metelkin couple were among those waiting at the bus stop for the last bus. Adriana's parents usually used their own car, but her father never got behind the wheel, even if a little killed. So that evening, the couple decided to take public transportation. Besides them, there were 6 other people at the bus stop, but nobody noticed how a foreign car jumped out of the corner at a great speed. Everything happened in a split second, and the silence of the night was broken by the screams of the victims of the accumulated inadequacy. Adriana's parents were at the epicenter of the accident, and both died on the spot. It was a terrible blow. Had it not been for Kathy, Adriana probably would not have recovered from that tragedy. Strangely, after the deaths of her late husband's relatives, Clara had permanently abandoned her fascination with otherworldly practices. Kathy still had her arm around her sister's shoulders as well. Adriana stroked her hand. Thank you for everything. Why are you thanking me all of a sudden? Are we breaking up? No, it just came to me. It happens to me all the time. I've been to other people's weddings. It's exhausting. Sometimes I have to turn myself inside out to get the damn fee in full. You know how demanding clients are nowadays. You sign a contract where everything is laid out, and some particularly zealous characters start picking out flaws. About 2 years ago, I had such a case that one super-duper dad rejected my script. The man found several games with guests offensive, and he himself, without warning, reduced the amount of the fee. I didn't know there was such a thing. How'd it end? In court. I'm not the kind of guy who gets screwed over with impunity. That asshole paid me for moral damages, but I got a lot of nerve. Kathy, you're really good. A real generalist. Woman-corrected wedding generalist. Speaking of birds, you and I have been chatting and forgetting about the main thing. That's right. You were going to surprise me. I'll get right on it. Just be patient, and you'll be in for a surprise. Kathy began fiddling with the equipment. She accompanied this process with exclamations of horror. It's all covered with dust. The equipment doesn't like such carelessness. We'll have to fix it right away. Kathy even stretched out her tongue in a labor frenzy, and Adriana remembered how her younger sister as a child had also worked wonders, for which she had been scolded by her parents. She wanted to help Kathy so badly. Maybe I could be useful to you. You know, my Betty is very advanced in technology, and she taught me a few things. Without turning around, her sister said cheerfully, "Thanks, I got it. The thing is, this is an old tape, and you can only watch it on an old player. I can't get my hands on it, and I've been trying to get my archives in order." Kathy fiddled with the equipment for another 5 minutes, but her efforts were successful. Something inside the device hummed and a splash screen appeared on the TV screen. Adriana and Michael together forever. The sound is a little bad, so we'll be watching a silent movie tonight. Both women held their breath into the screen. They didn't notice the moment the bride silently entered the room again. That is Adriana from the past tried to wave her hand in white gloves. Tears of happiness, symbolic bouquet fell to the floor. Kathy and Mother very clearly pronounced bad luck. Unfortunately, it was Adriana who flinched and looked at her aunt. Kathy swooped down on her mother. "Mother, are you like Hamlet's father's shadow walking around the apartment? Couldn't you have knocked?" The older woman excused herself. "You said 5 minutes. It's been half an hour. The kettle's cold. We're in no hurry." She went into the kitchen, muttering to herself. "I don't know how to please her." Adriana, in a trembling voice, asked Kathy, "Maybe that's enough movies for today." "Wait, that's the most important thing I haven't seen. Just 1 more minute. You don't have to be patient." I remember that moment well. When my bouquet fell, a strange woman picked it up. She said something else to me, but I couldn't make it out. I didn't feel comfortable asking back. "Kathy," a key clicked, and the machine buzzed loudly again. The flamboyant guest first held out the bridesmaid's bouquet, but immediately changed her mind. Her lips moved, and Adriana heard clearly, "This is not your destiny. You cut down your tree for me." White streaks ran across the screen, soon replaced by images of wedding fun. The guests whispered creepy, "And that's exactly what you wanted to surprise me with." Kathy smirked smugly. "Not really. There's nothing surprising about any of this. In my experience, brides often drop or forget their bouquets. The strange thing is different. The ladies in black are the stuff of legend. That soothsayer face friend of Aunt Clara's. Yes, but I have no idea how this messenger of hell ended up at your wedding. I have no idea either." This fact came as a real shock. Images from the past and images of people who are no longer alive began to spontaneously resurface in front of her eyes. For some time, Adriana remained in shock, and Kathy became worried. "Adriana, why are you so excited? Let's go and have a cup of tea. They'll let you go right away." "No, I don't feel like doing anything." "Kathy, do you know where Vanga is?" Did the sister take her eyes out? I have no idea. What do you need her for? Look, don't worry. It's all over and done with. If I'd known that movie would make such an impression on you, I wouldn't have shown it to you. Adriana got up abruptly, and I'm gonna go. I need to be alone for a while. Kathy grumbled, not hiding his resentment. And the tea. Mother's been working hard. She's already made it. Kathy, don't be offended. Next time we'll have tea. And so we sat. I don't understand, Adriana. Why are you making such a fuss? There's nothing you can do about it anyway. What's the point? You have a perfectly happy family. It's safe to say you've had a good life. Yeah, you could say that. Or you could say it another way. I have a favor to ask you. If you can find out about this fortune teller. Adriana greeted the family hearth with a ringing silence. Her heart was empty and she didn't want to do anything. The woman walked to the bedroom and stood in front of the large mirror. She asked her reflection, "How happy are you, Adriana?" And she cried because she knew the answer to that question. She was no longer surprised that for the second time in one day, she had to answer it mentally. What did surprise her was why had fate made such an abrupt reversal now? A period of reflection. Adriana had a short period of time after graduation. She realized that she was more attracted to architecture in the classical sense of the term. The girl thought that her father would be happy to hear about her decision. Benjamin cautiously asked Adriana, "Confess, did you really choose this institute out of the call of your heart or for the sake of principle?" "Dad, how could you think that about me? You know that I have been dreaming since I was a child." Father interrupted his daughter. Childhood dreams and adulthood are not the same thing. Dreams most often turn to dust, and one realizes that one has fallen into one's own trap. I really don't want my daughter to be trapped like that. But if it's a sensible choice, I'm happy for you. Adriana assured her father, "Papa, it is a sensible choice. I really want to be an architect, and I made this decision quite consciously." That was the end of the discussion of their daughter's future, and the parents did not bring up the topic again. Despite the big competition, the dynasty entered the university from the first go. She was also lucky in the fact that she was enrolled in budgetary training. The young girl's imagination of the future was imagined full of grandiose affairs. About meetings with guys, she did not think then, because she considered the main goal of study. Together with her in the same institute entered the girl who studied in their school. Only Cindy graduated a year earlier than Adriana. An acquaintance was very happy when she met Adriana in the corridor of the institute. "Hi." Nice surprise. At least one familiar face. Adriana was happy too. "It's nice to see you too. What department are you in? Did you have to apply for economics?" "I didn't get enough points to get into the budget, so I had to apply for a fee. No other options. I failed last year. And this year I'm unlucky again. It happens. Yes, fate doesn't favor everyone. But I'm lucky in love. You know, I got a guy who's got 1,000 kilos in the firm and money at our institute. Probably the son of some important official." "No, you didn't. My beau has already graduated as a mechanic and works in a car service. The money's flowing into his pocket. You know, we've only been dating a month, and he's already given me a ring." Adriana gasped in surprise. "You're marrying him so fast." Cindy rolled her eyes. "If only our relationship were still in the active stage. She gave me a ring with a small stone in it. So no hints yet, but I'm waiting for him to get an engagement ring." Conversations like this between young men and young women happen a lot, and Adriana has had to listen to confessions from close friends more than once, and this time she only listened to Cindy's revelations out of politeness, and by evening she had forgotten all about the conversation with her. About a week later, the girls met again in the same corridor. Cindy immediately gave Adriana a friendly smack on the cheek and said meaningfully that "you and I," as in the popular song, "at the same place at the same hour." How can you not believe in fate? Adriana waved it away. "Come on, it can't be otherwise. We're in the same institute and walk the same corridors." Cindy agreed reluctantly. "That's true, but I'm a bit of a fatalist. I'm fascinated by all things mystical. Michael laughs at me. He says my brain's turned the wrong way. Adriana thought that she herself would definitely be offended by a guy who would criticize her mental abilities instead of complimenting her. But she did not express her opinion out loud because she considered her acquaintance with Cindy to be an everyday trifle. What was my surprise when she saw her again the day after class? Cindy was a little confused. "I'm sorry to bustle you here, but I have some business to attend to." Adriana hurried home because she had promised her parents to do a general cleaning in the apartment. But good manners prevailed, and she politely asked how I could help you. The friend immediately became animated. "You see, my Michael is having a party tonight. He asked me to invite the girls so that their male companions wouldn't get bored. I asked my friends, but they all had emergencies tonight. So help me out, friend." Adriana intuitively put her hands to her chest. "Cindy, I'm sorry, but I can't make it tonight either. I've got a lot to do at home. I've got an essay to write. Let's do it another time." Krakova clutched at the sleeve of her coat. "I promised Michael today, and I don't want to disappoint him. He's so cool, a real macho. And I can already see myself next to him in a suspended dress." Adriana shook her head and Cindy continued to talk her down. "Look, this is a chance to find a nice guy. My Michael doesn't hang out with just anyone. His friends list includes the sons of bureaucrats and professors. Cindy, I don't need this. I'm not looking for a life partner yet. I have other interests. You should. You have to do everything in a timely manner, especially not marriage and children. That's what my mom says, and I trust her completely." Adriana did not enter into an argument with the intrusive girl and made a new attempt to get rid of her. But at that time, a young man and a politically built man approached them. "Cindy, this is your friend. Pleased to meet you. Michael, master craftsman of old and new iron." The guy extended his hand to her and had to reciprocate the gesture. Cindy's beau behaved confidently and even a little on the head, and Adriana was bewildered by such an onslaught. So it took Michael less than a minute to persuade the girl. Another quarter of an hour she spent to warn her parents and change her clothes. The party was a buffet, so all the guests behaved relaxed. Adriana only drank orange juice. She didn't even touch the food. Cindy stayed close to her lover all evening. She looked faithfully into his eyes and caught his every word. Such subservience disgusted Adriana, and she waited impatiently for this social performance to end. Several times Michael approached her and inquired, "Adriana, I hope you are not bored." She smiled. "No, not at all. You're having a wonderful time." As the guests began to leave, Adriana slipped into the hallway and pulled her coat from the coat rack. She opened the door. Outside, she breathed a full sigh and thought that she had wasted an entire evening. The next day, Cindy voiced her grievances. "Why did you run off early? You could have warned me. I'm looking for my friend, and my friend isn't here." Adriana didn't like it, and your rebuke of Cindy. "Our relationship can hardly be called friendship. In the old days, it was called acquaintance in passing. So I owe you nothing, and you owe me nothing." I was very tired and decided to leave. Cindy waved her hand. "Come on, you don't have to explain. It's clear enough." Everyone forgot and went their separate ways. Adriana was very happy about the peaceful resolution of the situation, but she still walked around looking around for a few more days. She no longer wanted to meet Cindy, but she met the fiancé of an acquaintance of hers quite unexpectedly. It was all due to a malfunction in her father's car. Benjamin had been complaining about the problem for a long time, but he hadn't had time to stop by the car service. And one morning, when they wanted to go to the village, the car did not want to start. The men's side doomed all the dead. "My cars need to be repaired." Benjamin called his good friend, and he promised to pull him to the nearest service station. "Benjamin, they'll have the car on wheels by tonight." In aviation, they put the equipment on the wing, but here they put it on the wheel. Really, it's a great idea. Benjamin agreed with this conclusion. You're good. I wouldn't have thought of that. Adriana had never been interested in cars before, but now she was getting curious. She really wanted to see with her own eyes how the masters would create a miracle. After all, my father's car was quite an ancient machine and needed replacement long ago. But Benjamin did not even want to hear about buying a new car. My Swallow has not yet exhausted its resource. It is still capable of what a pile of ruled parts can do. The father did not say, but the daughter believed him. That day, she too decided to support her father. Dad, can I come with you? Benjamin was surprised. What are you going to do there? A car repair shop is not a beauty parlor. There's nothing interesting there for a young girl. So what? I'll just see how scrap metal is transformed into a working machine. If that's the case, then let's go. The master who was to perform the miraculous transformation before her eyes. The miraculous transformation was Michael. The young man recognized her immediately and was very happy. Adriana, what brings you here? It's just my dad's car doesn't want to work. We will now take a look and determine the cause of your machine's disobedience, and then we will treat it. Benjamin was surprised that his daughter knew the master, who was recommended to him by an acquaintance. Trying not to attract attention, he whispered to his daughter Adriana, I didn't realize you had such helpful friends. The girl also answered in a whisper, Dad, Michael, is not my friend. He is the fiancé, hers. Remember I told you about the girl from our school? We're in college together, only she's in economics. He made some sort of statement. Yeah, I remember something. I think her father worked in my crew for a while, but the pay didn't suit him, so he moved to the public utilities. Yeah, his exact last name. While the daughter and father were discussing mutual acquaintances, the car service workers promptly made a diagnosis and began to repair the problem. Michael was satisfied and informed the customers. It could have been worse, but it was nothing serious. So in an hour or a little more, you will be up and running. Benjamin was glad to hear from the foreman not so much a reassuring prognosis as an affectionate nickname, which he always used when it came to his car. He gave Michael's hand a long shake. Thank you for understanding. It's a pleasure to have you take on the task of repairing my car. It is rare to find such competent specialists among young people today. Michael accepted the praise with a satisfied smile. He himself kept his eyes on the customer's daughter when the car was completely ready. The master and suggested Benjamin to check the performance of the vehicle. Adriana, the father, sat down in the driver's seat and lost sight of his daughter for a while. Only later Adriana realized that Michael in such an innocuous way eliminated the father to the girl with whom he needed to talk privately. The young man, without further preamble, stated to Adriana, After that evening, I don't find myself. The girl did not understand what the guy, who by all indications was not lacking in female company, was getting at. Are you sick? Michael felt his eyes. I guess you could call my condition an illness. Your image haunts me day and night, and I don't know what to do about it. Are you kidding? I thought you had a real health problem. My mom works at the hospital. She could help you get checked out. Oh, thank you. I'll definitely take advantage of this unique opportunity, but a little later. For now, I'd like to ask you a small favor. Adriana had a responsive heart, and she prepared to listen to the guy's request. She even thought that Michael would ask her to give something in Cindy's words. But what he said instantly made the blood rush to her face. Adriana, I'd like to meet you. We could go to a movie or take a walk in the park. How would you like that? The girl was confused. But you, Michael, have you guessed what Adriana is confused about? If you mean Cindy, we have nothing in common. Absolutely nothing. She and I had a nice time together. That's all. Adriana remembered Cindy proudly showing her Michael's gift. She had acted arrogantly, as if she were the most attractive girl on the entire planet. Adriana had wanted to rub her nose in it from day one, and she quickly realized that the most effective way to do that was to steal Cindy's fiancé. Adriana lowered her eyes languidly and barely audibly said, I don't mind going out with you. Adriana didn't realize that her love had taken her on a whirlwind spin. After her first romantic encounter with Michael, and just a few dates later, she was already catching every word he said. Michael presented her with an engagement ring 3 months later. Adriana immediately agreed to become his wife. When Cindy learned that her friend had literally stolen her fiancé from under her nose, she wished her, "One day you will give with someone else's happiness, and I wish only one thing to happen as soon as possible." Cindy was not among the guests at their wedding. Did not meet Adriana with her then, because after marriage, her life changed dramatically. First, her parents died tragically, and then a cute little girl was born, Betty. The young mom had to leave her studies at the institute and devote all of herself to her family. But she made this choice without regret. Only years later, she began to think more and more often, it could have been different if you hadn't dropped out or married another guy. The sun had been pouring down without mercy since early morning today, and the air conditioners were running at full blast in the beauty parlor. And Kelly was enjoying the coolness. She was lazily flipping through the latest issue of a fashion magazine, waiting for her turn to see her son. Only Lisa knew how to turn the latest dunce into a true beauty, and Kelly treasured her friendship with her very much. She glanced at her watch and picked up another magazine from the stack. Thoughts flowed slowly through her head like boats in a pond, and Kelly was soothing their slow, even relaxed flow. She was happy with everything, with the way her life had turned out, and with the trade that brought a steady income. Lisa appeared in the waiting room, and in a sweet voice, said, "You're already here. Now literally just a minute more. Please bear with me. I'll sign a little for the client and invite you in." Kelly waved his hand condescendingly. "Don't worry, Lisa. It's such a divine chill. I'm ready to sit for hours. I'm very glad you're feeling comfortable." Lisa jumped behind the partition, and Kelly was once again immersed in pleasant thoughts. When the Creator had distributed his gifts to the earth, he had obviously not noticed the small villas, so she had gotten almost nothing but inventive minds. Unique, capable with an ugly girl manifested itself already in kindergarten, and educators were surprised. So ugly, but so smart. Probably will become a scientist when she grows up. Kelly's parents do not bother to take care of their daughter. They were constantly fighting. The girl was thrown around like a ball from one old man to another. But since Kelly was an unusual child, she liked this way of life. Then her parents separated for good, and the girl was sent to be raised by her great-grandmother, who lived on an abandoned farm. Kelly still does not know to whom the old woman was a relative. Her real name also forever remained a mystery, because the grandmother's name was simple and clear. The old Vane. The old lady was not offended by this attitude and cheerfully said, "Let them call me Pan at least, as long as they paid me money." Grandmothers practiced fortune-telling and conspiracies of villagers. Kelly had heard that she was a hereditary witch. Sometimes, when her grandmother was in a good or cheerful mood, she helped her. These were especially happy moments because the girl could go into the room where the grandmother was preparing potions from herbs and summoning spirits without fear. The child's brain memorized and absorbed everything. Despite her young age, Kelly already knew that in the future she would also predict the future and reveal the secrets of the past. Perhaps in time, Kelly would have mastered all the dough and methods. But the old sorceress suddenly died, and the girl again began to shuttle between the houses of relatives. But the acquired experience helped validate these earnings for pocket expenses. Already in elementary school during recess to the girl crowded near her desk. "Kelly, tell me what I get for the test." And she willingly made a prediction, although such predictions did not always correspond to reality. The young fortune teller's popularity grew by the day. She began to turn to her high school students, including guys, so that she guessed the ticket number on the exams. For such consultations, Kelly took pennies. Considering she could easily make 100 predictions a day, she always had money. But someone in the young fortune teller's clientele blabbed about her business, and Kelly got the attention of the juvenile department, the elderly relatives she was staying with at the time. Parents got in a tizzy. The girl's the same way. She's been running scams since she was that age. What will she make of it? Since the parents of the villa could not find even the best specialists of internal affairs, and all the grandparents went into complete denial, the bright girl was determined in a boarding school, but the fame of Kelly ran after her on her heels, and she did not have time to spend the night in the State House. No matter how much praise the clientele 30-year-old fortune tellers, in addition to the basic techniques, divination perfectly possessed the voice, and each session turned into a small but exciting performance. The teacher and nannies carried sweet gifts to the girls and asked them to say what would happen to their relatives of the same age. The boys were most interested, and they consulted her on the matter. Once Bella was called aside by the stable boy and Uncle Sam and embarrassed, asked to make him a conspiracy for a drink. "I don't feel comfortable approaching you on such a delicate matter, but my spouse has been dragging me down. She eats me up, and every day they tell me you're gonna drink. I'll put you in the hospital. Make me a potion that'll make me feel better all at once." The request was unusual, but I was coming out of the recesses of my memory the recipe by which my great-grandmother had once prepared a decoction for the director of the local collective farm. Surprisingly, the man stopped drinking. Sam's uncle was also satisfied with the result of the treatment prescribed by the little sorceress. In a burst of the kindest feelings, he advised her to make up a pseudonym for herself. That's what all the famous mediums do. Take Vanga. By the time you get your name out, your tongue gets confused, and your last name doesn't sound good at all. You're gonna have to come up with something that fits your brain. Kelly thanked the stable boy for the tip and headed for the library. She spent several days poring through thick books until she found what Vivienne Monaco needed. She was sure that such a colorful pseudonym would ensure her a successful future. But soon the girl realized that for success is not enough just one voiced name. It still needs connections, and the circle of acquaintances of the graduate of boarding school is too narrow. Kelly realized that she only has to wait for that happy accident, which in an instant can change everything. In this waiting, 3 years passed. During this time, Vivienne de received a specialty of a secretary at the local school. But to get a job, the girl was not in a hurry. To provide herself with a tolerable existence, she began to visit strange places where she fortune-telling to all comers. Especially good catch was in the electric trains, but after a few successful trips, she was found out by competitors and robbed to the thread. In parting, one of the freaks warned her that if you get caught again, you'll be in trouble. Kelly did not risk her precious life and continued practicing in parks and recreation areas. True, in the wintertime visiting such places was minimal. Freezing. Citizens refused the services of the fortune teller, so she often went to bed with an empty stomach. The young fortune teller was quite desperate when the very case she had been waiting for came up. During one of her visits to the park, when she was in despair, she noticed a newspaper neatly rolled up in a trash garbage can. Kelly immediately clicked in her head, and that's no accident. There's definitely something in that paper for you. Ignoring the chill wind, she sat down on the ice-encrusted bench and eagerly read the ads at the bottom of the page. In bold print was a message to all those who have extraordinary abilities. We invite you to take part in the first regional psychic contest. Then, in smaller font, there was a brief description of the conditions and the address where the selection would take place. Kelly immediately felt a surge of energy. She no longer felt hunger cramps in her stomach and dizziness. She could already see herself winning the contest, basking in the glory. That vision almost completely came true, with the only difference being that hers came in second place. But the prize of audience sympathy was awarded to her, along with a pretty hefty sum of money. The contest was divided into several stages. But all this time, Kelly lived in the apartment of a kind woman who was obsessed with occult practices. She had a daughter, but she disappeared from the house as soon as she saw the strange guests in her apartment. Kelly herself was not very happy as a child and asked the landlady, Aunt Slaga, if maybe we should clean up. It's a bit awkward. We're here comfortably, and your daughter is nowhere to be found. It's okay. My daughter has relatives across town. My late husband's brother and his family, Kathy, went there and had a bath. You're not shy. Make yourself at home now. Kelly physically felt a thin string break in her heart. She cried on the bosom of this kindest woman and told her about her hard life. Slaga comforted her for a long time, and then the legend suddenly asked her for a picture of the relatives to whom Kathy had gone. Aunt Clara, do you have a picture of them? The woman was surprised, and you can tell from a picture. I didn't know. Slaga rummaged through the drawers of the dresser for a long time until she pulled out an old photograph. This is just one of them. Here they are with the whole family, so to speak. Kelly ran her hand over the picture and handed it back to the owner. Things are not good in this family. Your niece is going to have some bad luck soon. And she's in no hurry to get married. The aunt was surprised. It's something out of a fantasy world. Adriana is only 19. She's still in school. And Kathy never said anything about her getting married. And they're sisters. But as friends, Wendy said sadly, I'm rarely wrong. Practice counts for a lot in our business. If you could tell me when their wedding is, maybe I can make up for it. But the most unforeseen thing happened. The young bride was so confused that she accidentally dropped her bouquet. Kelly was nearby at the time. She tried to catch the crowning symbol, but failed. She picked up the bouquet and wanted to give it to the girl who was standing next to her, but she saw an unkind glint in the stranger's eyes and changed her mind. There was nothing else to do but keep the wedding amulet. Of course, Kelly was well aware of wedding customs, but she had no other choice. Suddenly, she thought to herself, wondering how the couple's life had turned out. They must have split up long ago. Lisa, with a smile on her face, reappeared in the waiting room and cute, "Forgive me, for God's sake. She's such a cranky customer. As soon as she saw that you also came to me, she started to get cranky. It's not like that, and it's sticking out. I had to redo almost the whole hairstyle." The fortune teller smiled graciously. "That's all right. Believe me, I wasn't bored because I had time to think about important things. And then you have a really comfortable environment here." Michael had a hard time closing his eyelids. "Well, it's morning. Uncle Michael, it's time to get ready for work. Just thinking about the bosses getting on my nerves. I feel sick to my stomach." Adriana rolled over onto her other side. "Michael, you have to move the whole house. I wanted to get a little lower in bed today on the second shift. And about the bosses, I can tell you that if you had your brains in the right place, you wouldn't have to take orders from someone else today." "Thank you," the wife encouraged. The man threw back the blanket and grabbed his pants from the chair, but while trying to pull on his tights, he got tangled in his pant leg and almost fell. "What kind of life is this? My pants won't even listen to me. Adriana, did you give me a steak or a potion? What kind did you give me? I want to get chalk in my old age. I have nothing else to worry about. How can I poison you? You're the one who's trying to get off the hoof. If you don't stop drinking vodka by the bucketful. Why are you slandering me? I know the measure. If you knew the measure, you wouldn't have drunk your car dealership and I wouldn't be counting pennies till payday. Wow. The poor underprivileged should have studied instead of dropping out of school. I'm sorry, but the cleaning lady pays them the minimum wage." Adriana couldn't take it anymore. "Michael, you still have the conscience to reproach me. If I hadn't married you, I wouldn't have to drive a rag across the floors. You're the one who led me astray." The woman sat down on the edge of the bed and said dreamily, "And in general, if I had studied and received a diploma, I would hardly marry you." It was a hard blow to the male ego. "So you regret it? 20 years together. That's not a word. Suddenly, you're regretting it." Adriana was about to say something mean to her husband, but her daughter knocked on the door. "Mom, Dad, don't you get tired of the same thing every morning? If only, why do you keep trying to make the past go away? Normal people live for today." Michael muttered to Betty, "Really, it's too late for you and me to change anything. Although you do have someone. I wondered who that mysterious nickname was that kept calling you. Betty yelled from the kitchen. Parents, I love you very much, and please don't make a scene like Othello and Desdemona. The couple laughed, and Michael said cheerfully, there's something to it. Although you will not be able to Desdemona, but Othello of me will definitely get the same type. Only if you believe Shakespeare, Moore did not use combustible mixtures. William just decided to hide this fact, so as not to disgrace his hero. Adriana looked at the hero's watch. If you keep scratching your tongue, I'll definitely be late for work. And the boss is happy to cotton on to you. You're glad. Why should I suffer? I'm never late, and the bosses appreciate me. The clock was really ticking, and Michael had breakfast on the go. He was almost at the door when he remembered Kathy's call. Adriana, yesterday, when you were away, our wedding general called. She said she had some important information for you. Call her cell phone tonight. The woman grumbled in her heart. Once again, this beast ran away without saying goodbye. What kind of manner? Is it so hard to come in for a moment, to have a human conversation? Betty stuck her head through the open door. Mom, you know Aunt Kathy's not an ordinary person. I so don't know how anyone can have a holiday party for almost 20 years in a row. I would have lost my wedding business for sure. That's what it looks like from the outside. But when the pressure is on, you will learn to sing like a nightingale and polka butterfly dance. Betty looked at her mother's mother with an expressive look. I don't like the way you and your father have been fighting lately. I guess we're getting tired of each other. That's what happens in life. People live, and then bam, they can't stand each other. Mom, you surprise me. I always believed you two loved each other. Love is only in books and movies. Life is so much simpler than that. You better tell me, do you still have your phone number? Betty carelessly threw his mother. Today there are more convenient and faster ways to contact the right person. I'll give you a virtual contact session. Just tell me when it's convenient for you to talk to Aunt Kathy. Adriana had a moment of reflection tonight. Just, don't say anything to your father, and you don't want him to hear what we're going to talk about. Betty held his breath in anticipation of something interesting. Mommy, can I have some secrets? I love secrets and mysteries. I confess I overheard a little bit of your conversation with Kathy last night. You were talking about a wedding. Some fortune teller you mentioned. I'd love to be at the center of something intriguing. The woman interrupted her daughter's reverie. You should be thinking about your studies. The session is coming up, and you haven't opened a single book. You'll end up like me, an underachiever, scrubbing the floors until they shine. Betty grimaced. Mama, don't predict a bitter fate for me. I'm sure I'll learn and get my diploma. And even if I have to get married at such an early age, I won't be in a hurry to continue the family. Oh, don't be so sure. Everyone says that, and then changes their mind. You're not going to put off having kids until you retire. Then my father and I will not be lucky enough to see grandchildren. My daughter looked at her watch. Oh, Mommy, I'm so late. Let's see you tonight. Adriana leisurely tidied up the room and took out a photo album. The images from Kathy's movie kept popping up in front of her eyes. She kept coming back to that mysterious brunette with the piercing eyes. I don't know why, but I wanted to know what Nietzsche's soothsayer words meant. The time dragged outrageously slow, and she barely waited for Betty to return. Her daughter skipped straight into the kitchen. Mammy, I remember everything and about our conversation, and about the promise not to say anything. Daddy, now, I'll just pop something tasty in my beak, and you and I will call Aunt Kathy. Adriana had never communicated with her sister via video link before, and it was a real miracle for her to see her own face on the screen. The sisters said hello, and Kathy got right to the point. Adriana, I'm sorry, but I'm running out of time. Another wedding. Yes, it is. But it's Wednesday. People get married on Mondays. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, let's not get distracted by extraneous matters. I found our fortune teller. Turns out my mom still keeps in touch with her. It'll be nice when I get to meet this woman. Are you sure you want to meet her? Think about it. Maybe we shouldn't change anything. Okay, I'll think about it. Then you let me know or have Betty send me a message. The screen went blank, and Betty said disappointedly, I never found out anything interesting. Adriana felt incredibly tired. You still have a lot of interesting things ahead of you. Take your time, my daughter. I'm going to bed. And you feed Daddy when he gets home from work. Adriana had hoped she could sleep. But now, after talking to her sister, her head was filled with anything but sleep. She was going over all the events she had to remember. And now one came up that she had long forgotten. It wasn't even an event. It was a phrase Michael had thrown at the wedding. It was the one thing that had left her confused. Even the mood was gone. By the end of the party, she told herself it was all a figment. She played out all her fantasies. It was like this. They were accepting congratulations, and Michael was smiling, quite smiling, hugging her. Adriana was hot, and she threw off his arm. The young husband leaned toward her. What's all this caprice? Don't you realize that you look so good? Only next to me alone you are not so good anymore. He put his hand on her shoulder again. Adriana wondered. I wondered if he really thought that, or if he was just making a bad joke. Of course, she really wanted to find out. But then she got dizzy, forgot herself, and decided her smug. Her husband had blurted it out without thinking. Now lying on the bed, she was remembering some of their moments, some of their phrases, and she realized that Michael, even now, after he was only a little bit away from being a real alcoholic, he sincerely thought that he had done her a great favor by marrying her. He also really didn't like the fact that she was working as a cleaning lady. Adriana sat up sharply in bed. For indeed, when he had to sell his auto repair shop because it had stopped making a profit, profits were known to be made by the businesses that were being run. He naturally got drunk and consoled himself in the kitchen. It's nothing. But now we have a nice family, an unemployed man and a cleaning lady. That doesn't sound like a businessman and a cleaning lady. Adriana didn't pay much attention to his words, but now she felt very offended. She quickly got out of bed, opened the closet, took out the sock where she hid her rainy day supplies, took a few bills, got dressed, and headed out of the kitchen. Betty peeked out. Oh, Mom, where are you going? Daddy will be here soon. Adriana grinned wryly. Well, he'll be here, but he'll be in such a state that he won't know what's for dinner or who's home. I'll be back in a couple hours. My mom's all out, and that has something to do with it. Adriana didn't let her daughter finish her sentence. Stop making stuff up. Nothing has anything to do with anything. I just decided to get a haircut. I look like a bum. Betty's mouth slowly opened. For as long as she could remember, her mother had a permanent one, different on the back of her head. She just didn't picture her mom. Oh, you're so full of it. All right, go. Grade's about to crawl in on our happiness. Mom, why are you doing this? Adriana didn't answer anything. She went out into the yard. So Michael has to go that way. So she'll go the other way. She walked for a long time, hesitating to enter the barber shop. It was probably because she hadn't been to a place like that in a long time. Finally, she made up her mind. Hello. The master turned to her and smiled. She had just styled Chernival and the woman. Hello. I'm sorry. We have no seats for today. Excuse me. Adriana already wanted to turn around as a customer. Lisa said suddenly, your last client for today is not coming. So you can safely take this woman. You're just finishing up. The master looked confusedly at her client, then at Adriana. You can wait a little while. If the person who signed up doesn't come within 10 minutes, I'll take you. The customer turned to Adriana. You wait. No one is coming. Adriana awed. She recognized the woman immediately. It was the same fortune teller with the strange name who had picked up the bride's bouquet. Adriana was now trying to remember where it had gone when she stood up. Adriana immediately turned to her. I can't really talk to you. The woman looked at her in surprise. Why are you rushing things? Your aunt has already called me, and we will see each other very soon. It's just that I need a little time to get everything ready." Adriana started to feel scared. Arenda leaned into her, not trying to change anything. It wouldn't work. Just accept it the way it's going to be, no matter how much it hurts you. Adriana recoiled from her. She had long since known that prediction she had once voiced to them. Aunt Clara had also been spoken by the military. Ta flashed her black eyes. "Don't be afraid. Sometimes you have to lose something to find it." She walked out of the barbershop, and Lisa took a breath. "I'm always afraid when she comes to me." Even though Vivian Lee always smiles kindly, leaves a nice tip, but when she looks at me with her eyes, it's like she sees everything from the inside out. She's such a legend. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking to you. Have a seat. What would you like?" Adriana smiled. "I'd like to change everything." Lisa smiled back. "That's what we'd like. Shall we get started?" Adriana looked at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize herself. Was she really attractive? And still quite a young woman. "She's Lisa. You're a wizard. It's not me. It's your desire to be different. Would you like me to give you the number of a very good craftsman who can fix your hands?" Adriana didn't realize she nodded. Adriana's predictions were all wrong. There was certainly nothing of the fortune teller in her, because Michael had come home sober. Even Betty almost fainted. She tried not to show it, though. "Daddy, come to dinner." She walked past her father twice, trying to catch the scent, but she couldn't. But her father figured out her plan. "I didn't drink." "You can. You didn't take it." "I didn't take it," just sighed Betty, blushed thickly. Even though they had a daddy like that. But Betty loved her father. Loved her mother, too, of course. But Adriana was sometimes too strict, and Daddy in any condition pitied and spoiled her daughter. Michael sat down at the table, took up a spoon, and his mother, where Betty was resting, who sat down in front of him with a plate, hummed if she had gone somewhere. Michael choked. "I mean somewhere. It's okay that it's evening." Betty shrugged. "It's not that kind of evening. As long as the barbershops are open," she said, and bought herself a tongue. Why would she do that? Maybe Mom wanted to surprise Dad. They've been fighting so much lately. Barbershops. Michael put it down carefully. I didn't feel like eating the spoon for some reason, and something had been going on in their family lately. He was sure that Adriana had no way of knowing that he had accidentally cheated on her 3 months ago. That's just how it happened. Where did this sturgeon, who had flown to him when he was still young, come from? They drank and remembered and remembered. He sobered up immediately. He ran away from her headlong. He couldn't understand how that could have happened. And now Adriana has repeated several times recently that she regrets living with him. She was understandable. He had done nothing for her to study then. And then I didn't do the whole putting myself first thing all the time. She would have learned. She'd look like that Sidorova, all fashionable, beautiful, and you can't tell what's on her nose. Dad, why aren't you eating? I don't feel like it. Do you know where these hairdressers work? Betty looked at her watch. You know, the ones downtown that close in an hour. Another hour passed in complete silence. Michael carefully pretended to watch TV. Betty looked at him restlessly. Something was going on in their family, and now Betty couldn't figure out who was to blame. The door slammed suddenly. Both Michael and Betty immediately jumped out into the hallway. Betty whistled. Mom, it's definitely you. Adriana smiled embarrassedly. Her long hair was gone. Adriana now had a short haircut and a very pretty chocolate color. Lisa also redid her eyebrows and shaped them. Well, who did? Mom, you look 20 years younger. I'm the one who looked so bad. My mood immediately soured. This is what the average family has brought themselves to. An alcoholic husband and a wife who's long since given up on herself. She glanced at her husband, ready to see the usual cloudy look. It was strange that he was still awake. Usually by 9 o'clock he was already wasted, spreading the smell of booze around him. Adriana had long ago learned to put the pillow between them so that his breath hit her and not Adriana. But Michael was sober. He silently turned around and went into his room. Adriana grinned sadly. Apparently not at all. Michael's idea of what a cleaning lady should look like. Kathy called suddenly, late at night 2 days later. That's what she always did, though. She liked to call when they were expecting a visit, when they didn't have time to visit at all. Adriana, here's the deal. Vanga will be at our place tomorrow night. She's expecting you. They wanted to call you tonight, but I could barely convince them to wait. I won't be back until tomorrow. I can't miss an event like this. I would have filmed the whole thing. Wait, what's wrong with you? The sister finally stopped talking and stared at Adriana from the screen. Adriana rushed to tell you. Hello, Kathy. You're not talking my teeth in. Hello. What's the matter with you, Betty? Come on, sneak the phone around your mother. Betty smilingly obeyed her aunt's orders. You know how to surprise me, Adriana. I thought it was all over. You're like a fish. Nice. I don't have time for this. I'll see you tomorrow. And Kathy immediately disconnected. No goodbye, no see you again. Adriana just shook her head. The years go by. Nothing changes in Kathy, only the numbers on her passport. Betty sat down next to her mother. Isn't that bad? At least she's moving, energetic, fashionable. Adriana sighed. And that simple female happiness she has no husband or children. 10 more years, maybe more. And then what? Betty looked carefully at her mother and for the first time talked to her the way one talks to adults. Mom, do you have any? This very happiness. Adriana tensed up. Why do you ask? Betty shrugged her shoulders. Well, you and Dad fight all the time. Are you saying you don't want to live with him? It wasn't like that before, even though he hasn't been drinking for a long time. Adriana sighed. I don't know how to answer you. Well, first of all patience comes to an end. I think you realize that. Secondly, in relationships, people who live together for a long time, sooner or later there comes a moment of, how can I put this delicately? Betty immediately suggested a crisis. Well, you could say that. Thirdly, yes, I have female bliss. As strange as that sounds, I have you and your father. We had a lot of good years before he got like this. Mom, why did he get like that? I can't tell you that, Betty, because I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna go to bed. I have to get up early in the morning, and I can't sleep, since we have to go to Kathy's. Betty got up. Mom, take me with you, and I'll take one look at her and see who I can get my hands on. She's not so famous now, but she still gets written about. She used to be a star. Adriana was just about to read to her daughter that she didn't need such meetings. As the front door opened, Michael arrived on time, which meant he was sober again. Michael sober didn't fit into Adriana's plans. She'd explained to him 10 times yesterday that she had a headache. That wouldn't work tonight, so she'd have to pretend she was asleep. Yeah, okay, but to keep me quiet in there. Adriana quickly shut the bedroom door behind her. Betty was old enough to realize that this was her mother's way of avoiding seeing her father. Hi, where's Mom? I bought a cake. Betty suddenly felt so sorry for her father. Dad, she's already gone to bed. She has to get up early. Michael looked upset. Yeah, that's right. She's a daughter. Let's go and have tea with you then. Betty nodded eagerly. Come on, Dad. Michael was sober again. For the second day in a row, this had not happened to him for years. The next day, Adriana and Betty arrived at Kathy's house. Her sister opened the door right away. Hello, family. I won't give you a hug because I'm playing hostess and baking pies today. Clara appeared in the hallway. She's baking rather than transferring groceries. The woman grumbled, but without malice. Betty immediately volunteered to help Aunt Kathy. Can I help you? May I? No, you have to, because I have a wild urge to throw this dough through the window. Betty laughed and took them after her aunt. Clara looked at Adriana carefully. How are you, Adriana? Looking good. Everything is fine. Let's go get some food. It's waiting for you. Adriana suddenly became very scared. She's already here. She's been here half an hour since she arrived. They went into the room. Adriana immediately recognized the woman who had been in the hairdresser's. I looked at her carefully. Then I took out some black bag and pulled out some things. "Oh, that's my wedding bouquet." Wendy sighed. "I should have thrown it away a long time ago. Ruined my life. Don't you feel sorry for yourself before, Peanut? Well, you should have thrown it away. Why keep dried flowers? Because they're not just dried flowers, they're your destiny. The bouquet was supposed to go to one of the girls. You dropped it and forgot." Adriana said uncertainly, "But they're really just flowers before the wedding. And after, if you do it right. But for now, they are in the bride's hands, so your destiny isn't complete in them. You threw them under your feet and trampled on your destiny. But no, I'm fine. Why did you call me here to listen to your lies?" Adriana shut up. Yes, that woman with the piercing and black eyes was absolutely right. Your sister should have caught your bouquet. You did the wrong thing. And all your life you've regretted marrying him. You've only recently been able to admit it to yourself. I kept him. That's why my love life didn't work out. But I don't regret it at all. Adriana looked up with hopeful eyes. What am I supposed to do now? We have a daughter. A daughter will understand. Not immediately, but she will. And you need to finish what wasn't finished at the wedding. Kathy fought with the filling. The first batch of pies was already in the oven. The second was to be with jam. She wasn't the least bit worried about not being able to hear what was being talked about in the room. She knew for sure that if not Adriana, her mother would tell her everything. Kathy, the woman, shuddered and turned sharply. Standing on the threshold of the kitchen was Adriana, followed by Kathy's mother and the catching legend. Adriana threw something at her, and Kathy caught it. "What is it?" Adriana laughed. "It's my sweet sister. My wedding bouquet that you were supposed to catch at the wedding." Kathy laughed. "Oh, I can't go with you. You can tell me I'm getting married soon." Brenda spoke up calmly. "You'll marry someone you never thought you'd marry. Just one important thing right now, so that the events that are coming up in your family don't fight about you. Remember the fact that it would have happened sooner or later anyway." Kathy was confused for just a moment, then putting aside the bouquet, said, "That's it. Let's have some tea." Betty, taking out our works of art. Betty, as if waking up from a dream. She rushed to the oven. Betty just smiled. "Study and learn. Will it be useful to you in life? Oh, how will it come in handy?" In the evening, after she'd gone home, Kathy's mother went to bed. The two sisters sat in the kitchen with a bottle of wine. Adriana had just told her everything the fortune teller had told her. And now she was thoughtfully shaking her glass, watching the wine shimmer in it. Kathy asked Adriana almost in a whisper, "And what do you intend to do?" You know, Kathy wasn't all that relieved after the conversation. "I should have talked to Michael a long time ago. I'm sure he's drinking because he doesn't love me either. He and I are trapped, you know, feeling the same way, but we can't make up our minds. If you're wrong, if he does love you." Adriana shook her head. "He doesn't." Kathy was silent for a while. Then she asked, "Okay, you'll talk to him. And then what?" "Then you won't believe this, but I don't want to be a cleaner anymore. I'm gonna take a course. I don't know what I'm gonna take, but I'm gonna take a course. Maybe even more than one. I'll get another job. I'll go to the hairdressers once a month. I'll finally become a woman." For whom? For myself. Kathy, you see, for me, it's like I've been asleep all these years. And now I realize I've been blaming Michael for everything. It's not that simple. What can I say? I feel sorry for Michael. I think he'd be lost without you. Are you suggesting I give up on myself and my life and devote the rest of my life to him? Kathy shook her head. "Yes, sister, you've got fire in your mouth. I can't even argue with that. Maybe you should stay. It's too late for that. Even though it's a small town. Thank God there's no problem with cabs." The cab arrived surprisingly quickly. Adriana got into the car and said, "Wow, I've never driven a car like this before." The driver of the cool car smiled embarrassedly. "You see, I'm not a cab driver, but it's so boring at home in the evenings that I decided to do it. And you know, it's a very interesting profession. It turns out that so many people want to talk to a stranger." Adriana laughed unexpectedly. "Oh, I'm definitely not going to tell you anything, because you won't believe me anyway." The man smiled at her in the mirror. "Where do you want me to take such a beautiful lady?" Adriana was embarrassed and gave the address. The man turned to her in surprise. "I'm sorry, I'm not mistaken. Did the compliment make you blush? I would kill your husband and all the men around him." They drove to Adriana's house in silence. As she was getting out, the man handed her a business card. "Here you go. If you ever get lonely, you call. We'll go for a ride. Have a cup of coffee. I realize this all sounds weird, and I'm probably not the right age to ask you out like this, but I don't know what else to say to see you again." Adriana, who didn't want to take the business card, held out her hand first. "I'll be sure to call you." Michael was sitting in the kitchen. Adriana walked in, pulling the air with her nose. It didn't smell. "So her husband is sober. Third day sober. That's good. Maybe we could have a normal conversation." She sat down across from him. Michael looked up at her. "Michael, I know why you drink." Adriana, "Well, you want me to try to quit." She shook her head. "It won't work." Michael raised his eyebrows upward. "That's something I didn't expect you to say." "Why not?" "Because you're gonna drink. As long as I'm around you." Michael looked at her in surprise. She continued, "Michael, we've been together for so many years that we basically shouldn't have any secrets from each other. And I don't understand why we're both trying to hide the obvious. You don't love me. I don't love you." Michael wanted to say something, but Adriana raised her hand. "Wait, let me finish. You think about it, and you'll figure it out for yourself. We're not old yet. Maybe one of us will have a chance to be truly happy for a little while." There was silence in the kitchen for a couple of minutes. Then Michael said, "What are your plans?" "I want to get a profession and stop cleaning up after others. And it would be great if you could reopen your workshop." Michael grinned. "Do you think I can do it?" "I don't doubt it. If I'm not around, you can do it. We'll invite Kathy. She'll take great pictures for the commercials. All your clients will come after you." "Michael, you've got golden hands." Betty sat silent for a long time when her parents told her their decision. Then she said to me, "Of course I don't like it. But if that's what you decide, if that's what's best for you, I hope you don't stop loving me." Michael had moved out before the divorce when Adriana offered to exchange the apartment. He said, "No, Adriana, it's yours in Betty's apartment. And I'm a man. I'll take care of my own housing problems." Adriana hugged him for a second. "I sincerely wish it all works out for you." Michael smiled back. "And I wish it for you." That same day, Adriana called the number that was written on the business card. "Good afternoon. I don't know if you remember me. It's impossible to forget you. I never thought you'd call." Andre was retired military. A little straightforward, but very interesting. Adriana felt like a girl running to him for a date. "Betty told the ladies every day something you broke in my mind. Usually after a divorce, people get depressed, hurt. But you and Daddy are just better. You look younger and better every day. Dad has taken over the workshop, so he'll soon surpass his former master." Adriana immediately sat down across from her daughter. "Betty, it's true. I'm so happy for him. You have no idea." Betty waved her hand. "Why wouldn't I? One of my parents got divorced. It's been a year, and they've been spitting at each other. It's the opposite of what we do in our family. You guys are happy for each other's success. That's our family. It's the opposite. By the way, Aunt Kathy's been helping Daddy a lot. She's got a whole ad campaign going. I didn't realize. I should call and thank her." Betty looked at her strangely, grinned, and then called, of course. Adriana didn't like to put things off, so she called her sister Kathy in the evening. She didn't pick up for a long time, but finally answered. She sounded kind of doomed. Yeah. Hi, Adriana. Hey, what's with the dying voice? Some rich fiancé didn't pay you again. No, I haven't photographed a wedding in 2 months. What's wrong, Kathy? You're the recognized wedding general. Adriana, I'm worried sick. Kathy, let's meet somewhere. Sit down, talk. Come on. Kathy's voice was full of doom. Adriana hung up the phone and began to pack quickly. What kind of sister was she? Because of her new relationship, she didn't even ask how Kathy was doing. What if she had something serious going on? It's true what they say, happiness blinds the eyes. Kathy was sitting at the table, and Adriana noticed that her sister had lost some weight. Though she'd always looked good, now she looked like the cover of a magazine. Adriana had just sat down when she noticed a ring on her sister's finger. So you didn't even tell your sister you were getting married? Well, I would have, but I'm just getting married. I don't hear joy in her voice. Don't you love him? Or does he love you? Does he love me? And I love him. I love him very much. I never thought it was possible to love like that in my life. I prayed on the walls. Is he married? No, not anymore. Then I don't understand what's wrong. Why do you look like you're committing the crime of the century? Kathy looked up at her quickly. That's exactly what I'm doing. Kathy, stop talking in riddles. Spit out who he is, and why are you in so much pain? Kathy drew in a chestful of air. Adriana, I apologize in advance. I didn't know it was even possible. I've known him forever. And I just now realized that he was mine, that he was meant for me. Adriana even slammed her hand on the table. Kathy, stop with the romantic nonsense. Just tell me what's going on. If he's hurting you, just tell me. Is there someone to stand up for you? It's Michael. That Michael on the wall immediately realized what Kathy's sister was saying to her. What does Michael have to do with this? I said, who is he? I said, it's Michael. There was a pause at the table, and Adriana was a little taken aback by the news. She remembered the fortune teller's words about not fighting amongst themselves. Do you really love him? Kathy just nodded. And yes, he's somewhere under the window of the cafe right now, worrying about how our conversation is going to go. Adriana became Kathy. Let me give you a hug. I guess you really are his muse. He could do what he couldn't with me. Kathy looked at her in amazement. You're not offended? Of course not. I'm glad. Now everyone's settled. I don't have to feel guilty anymore and give my consent to Andre. He was tired of waiting for me to be right for marriage. They hugged and did not immediately notice that someone else was standing next to them. When they turned around, the sisters' eyebrows crept upwards. Standing next to their table was Wendy, held by the arm of an imposing man in a tuxedo. Hello. I see I'm not the only one affected by the completed bouquet. Adriana Kathy nodded at the same time, smiled. Well, I wish you happiness. It's all right now. Every tree is yours. I'm getting married, too. Legend smiled a prefabricated smile that was completely out of character. And they walked towards the exit. The sisters looked at each other and laughed. They felt so at ease, as if they had really corrected some long-standing mistake. The only thing they agreed on was that at their wedding they would be very attentive to their bouquet. Life goes on, and I don't want to experiment anymore. I want to live in happiness and love.